continuing with our assessment of the Ramseys, just kind of looking at, what I'm starting to feel like in this interview before I get mad. I'm starting to feel like this is like a game for Barbara. Why do I say that? I say that because some of these things, I feel like people are meeting the Ramseys and the Ramseys are doing what they always do. This is what you would see when you see the Ramseys in real life. They would sort of like woo you, you know what I mean? And get you to see the humanity of them, which is fine. We are not accusing the Ramseys of being terrible people. We're just saying, before this, we're just saying a crime happened. Has nothing to do with who you are as a person and what you've done. We're just trying to say, there's a crime that took place. Just trying to get to the bottom of it. And I think they spent time kind of like wooing Barbara Walters, and she took the bait. It's not that you people are acting like these people, weren't Christians before, weren't a nice, wholesome family before this. And so when they meet him, weren't business and college educated people. So when they meet him, they're like, oh my God, you're college educated. Oh, whoa, you're a Christian? Oh, you owned a business, a successful one? Wow. I did not expect you to be such a nice person. We already know that. And I feel like Barbara is doing that where she's asking questions and she's giving them a chance to respond, but she's letting them off the hook. She's not pressing. At least so far. I don't know what's going to happen, next, but at least in so far as what I've seen. So here we go.
A major point of debate in the Ramsey case. One of the mysteries cited in newspaper stories was a lack of footprints outside the house. There was snow, but no footprints in the snow, the story said. Therefore, no intruder. But these actual police crime scene photographs taken early that morning, before JonBenet's body was discovered, show only scattered patches of snow around the house and clear paths to windows and doors. But mysteries abound in this case. When JonBenet's body was found, there was one of her favorite nightgowns next to her.
But it would have been cold. So you probably would have needed, I feel like you would have needed a jacket just to be walking around. Because if JonBenet was brought back home with a jacket and you take her out of the house, because that's one of the, I don't know, man, it's not to say that they would think about that in taking her out with no jacket, but I would, and it's possible, that they would take her out of the house with no jacket and then continue to move on. But with the level of care that this criminal showed to get to the point to where to get to the point to where you're feeding this girl pineapple and you're covering her up with her favorite blanket and all that stuff like that, then you're showing a certain level of care to where you would have basically gone and gotten her jacket just to make sure that she wasn't cold as you travel. And that would be a benefit to you as well, because you don't have to stop and be concerned about her complaining. And it's the asset, you know what I mean, that I'm going to use to leverage getting money from the Ramseys. And so obviously it doesn't have to happen that way. But if somebody, all signs pointing to a criminal who knows her and cares about her, but just wants the money, they probably would have gotten a jacket, and they probably would have had a jacket themselves. You know what I mean? So even if they would have gotten inside and had taken their jacket off, because all this moving around is going to make you warm, so and you want to have, the least amount of clothes on as possible in order to be able to sneak upstairs, do what you need to do, and get back downstairs and not have any problem, right? So you're going to have something warm on to combat because criminals still get cold, right? And so you're going to have something to combat the weather. And so that's going to add an extra layer that John and Patsy had the luxury of having as they went to, I think, the to the Christmas party at Fleet White's house.
So-called Bobby nightgown. And so there was the impression that whoever did this cared about this child, left the nightgown, left the blanket. again, oh, her parents did it, but they loved her, so they tried to comfort her even in death.
That's a very strange, that nightgown should not have been there. It's a clue of some type. We don't know what. Look, we know several very positive facts about this killer, we believe. It's a male. It's a pedophile that looks at young female children much differently than you and I do. They look at them with sexual eyes.
Obviously.
I've thought about it every day for 3 years. I've talked to experts. I've talked to experienced homicide detectives. It's the best profile we can come up with.
I'm gonna try not to get mad. I'm trying not to get angry. Cause that was stupid. I said what? I said JonBenet was found with her Barbie nightgown next to her, and that shows that somebody may have cared about her. When the camera panned back to John and Patsy, Patsy was shaking her head no like this, to suggest that whoever did this did not care. She's shaking her head going like that. That's concerning. But then John butts in with something, and it's like something simple like this, neither one of them have anything to say. I'm waiting for you. John is waiting for Patsy to talk. Patsy is waiting for John to talk. They're just, and they're trying to leave Barbara in the space to where Barbara has the comment for them. And it's just like, do you have any opinion on the facts of this case? What you've been talking to the Boulder police about? You can't comment on it because you ain't been doing it. You can't comment on the facts of the case because you're at odds with the Boulder police. And so when the Boulder police give you information, it becomes a problem because you can't even get on the same page with the police to even get information about the case, to where you have mutual trust, because there's nothing wrong with having an attitude and say, I think you're doing it the wrong way. I think you're going the wrong direction with this case. Absolutely. You're absolutely allowed to voice that. But when you have nothing to say, nothing helpful, when the police ask you, what can you do with this information? This is why what can we do with this? This is why we can't trust you. Because we asked you about, this person seems to show a certain level of care, and John says that this is the profile. What profile? You haven't described this person. This profile is a profile of a PDF filer, right? Someone who files PDFs, and they look at her and then commences to state the definition of a PDF filer. Did you think we didn't know what it meant? Is there something on my face that says I don't? Please help me understand more. Please tell me more about what that means. No one in that room said, oh my goodness, new term, tell me what it means. But John commences to say, oh, it's somebody that looks at children with these kinds of eyes. So what? I'm asking you, I didn't ask you about that. Okay, let's say it is a PDF filer who is looking at her with inappropriate eyes. Fine. What does that have to do with this being a person who cared about her enough to leave the Barbie, her favorite gown, the Barbie nightgown, down beside her? Care to comment on that? Do you know anything about that? And then you respond with, we don't know anything. You never know anything. And it's okay to not know anything, but my God, do you have an idea in the slightest of who this might be? Do you have a real opinion that you can say, that was one of the craziest things that we heard? We're still kind of lost on the fact that this finding that this happened to my daughter more than once. And this case just gets shocking to us and I feel like I failed as a father. I feel bad as a father because I feel like I should have protected my daughter. And to know that this happened, I'm just floored to know that this had been going on in some capacity, I'm just floored. But they went completely away from why it is the case that somebody would have put this down there by her to show some sort of care and caution. And they were like, yeah, it's almost like you're agreeing with me that this would be somebody who cares about her. You know how when people, when you say there's two of you in the house and you walk in and you say, man, I'm so hungry, I could eat an elephant. Good thing I left my leftovers from last night in the refrigerator and didn't eat them. Now I will sit down, get my clothes changed, and get changed into something more comfortable, and then go eat my food that I saved from last night. I can just taste it right now. And then you go in, the person goes in, and they go to look for their food and it's gone. And then they start talking to people in the house and they say, it's crazy how somebody can eat my food and just sit here stone-faced and act like nothing happened. And that person responds and says, yeah. That makes me feel like you ate my food. Because a normal person who I say that to would say, I mean, yeah, that's crazy, but I don't know who did it. I didn't eat it. That had nothing to do with me. I just went and got McDonald's. So that has nothing to do with me, what have you. That's what a normal person would say. But instead, a guilty person might say, oh, wow, yeah, man, that's crazy. I don't know, man. Yeah. I'm not saying John and Patsy are guilty. I'm just saying their behavior is wild.
So, could there have been an intruder? Coming up, a mysterious shoe print, a palm print, DNA material. And we'll show you the curious marks on the little girl's body, evidence that raises intriguing questions about who killed JonBenet.
If not the Ramseys, then who?
Do you think the murderer is someone you know?
The answer when 2020 returns. 2020 Friday continues. Once again, Barbara Walters.
In 1998, the two top detectives on the Ramsey case quit in protest. Police Detective Steve Thomas said he left because he felt the Ramseys should have been arrested. The chief investigator for the DA's office resigned because he felt the investigation unfairly focused on the parents. His name is Lou Smith. Lou Smith is probably the most experienced homicide detective in Colorado. He was brought into the Ramsey case by the district attorney after the DA's office lost confidence in the Boulder Police Department. Smith developed his own theory of the case that widened the gap with the police department. He became convinced that a stun gun, like this one, was used on JonBenet. A stun gun delivers an electric shock that incapacitates the victim. Smith noticed marks, reproduced in the sketch, on the autopsy photographs of JonBenet's body. The autopsy report referred to them simply as abrasions, but they reminded Smith of a previous stun gun case. There were two sets of marks on JonBenet's body, and when Smith calibrated their measurements, he felt they matched up with this popular stun gun model, the air taser. He felt the stun gun was used, and that's what kept JonBenet quiet, but there is no proof of that.
Well, I have not heard any expert disagree with that theory,
Well,
first of all.
some of the police do not think there was a stun gun.
I don't consider Boulder police experts in homicides. That's one of the problems we've been dealing with.
The police don't like that theory because it doesn't match up with the parents.
I told you I'm trying not to get mad. One person said it was a stun gun. And now you're ready to get me to try to convince me to jump on board with the stun gun theory because one person. I get mad because you're trying to send me on a stupid wild goose chase about some nonsense. Oh, somebody didn't like me. Okay. Now it's a stun gun because Lou Smith said so. And then Barbara just asked a great question. And that's what I'm saying. Their responses are like mid, like low to mid. And it's just like, yo, you didn't even respond with anything useful. Oh, you guys have already made up your mind. Shut up. Defend yourself. If I've already made my mind up, at least defend yourself and give me something reasonable to where I can say, yeah, that's kind of crazy. But I can't because you guys respond with, well, Lou Smith said it. And Barbara's like, well, that's never been proven. How have you proved that? What other experts have said that? What other experts have attested to that possibility? And you guys respond with, oh, well, I don't consider the Boulder Police Department, experts on homicide. Neither are you. They're more of an expert on homicide than you are. The heck are you talking about? What the heck are you talking about? The Boulder Police Department to this point has solved 15 homicides. No, I'm sorry, 13 out of 15 homicides. To this point, they've solved 13 out of 15 homicides. How many have you solved, John? I don't consider. It's easy to say, oh, I don't consider them anything. Well, they've solved homicides already. So I mean, like, even if they just solve one homicide, they're already ahead of the curve. So I don't understand your reasoning of how that puts you in the driver's seat to say that whatever they say is meaningless. Because if they've solved crimes 13 out of 15, their word is more important than your word because you haven't solved a dang thing. And you sit up here on your high horse and your pedestal telling the police about their job, and you haven't recommended one good lead yet that is panned out. All those leads that you have recommended and none of them have panned out in any way, shape, or form on a now defunct investigation team? What the heck are you talking about? I don't consider them, man, shut up.
Parents did it. If the parents wanted to bring their child to a basement quietly, they wouldn't have to use a stun gun. They could just say, come on, we're going to go to the basement.
You could.
For a surprise or something. That doesn't fit their theory that John or I were involved.
Why wasn't the body exhumed?
Don't know why the police didn't consider that.
What?
We were asked when this theory first surfaced about a stun gun that if the body were exhumed, it could be proved conclusively, but it had to be done fairly quickly. This was within months of when we just buried JonBenet. And I, as her father, could not bring myself to
Do it. Thank you.
do that. I had laid my child to rest. She was at peace. And that was a decision that I couldn't make about a stun gun. That if the body
Out to a basement quietly, they would.
He literally just contradicted himself. Literally just contradicted himself.
Didn't have to use a stun gun. They could just say, come on, we're going to go to the basement for a surprise or something. That doesn't fit their theory that John or I were involved.
Why wasn't the body exhumed?
You could absolutely do that. I don't know why they think that they're saying like something that's just like mind boggling. Oh, the police thought that we could you could do that. That's a possibility. What the freak are you talking about?
don't know why the police didn't consider that.
Why didn't the police? See, y'all gotta watch out for John. I'm telling you right now. You gotta watch out for JonBenet Ramsey. Because this bull crap He literally, when she asked why wasn't the body exhumed, he responds by saying, I don't know. Essentially, you're going to have to ask the Boulder police about that. We have factual knowledge that the cops were trying to find out all of these things about JonBenet before she was buried. And John forced and wrestled the body of JonBenet out of their hands so they could not continue the investigation, only to be on national television, on a national network as ABC. And somebody says, in a context of everything that you could do, why didn't you do everything you could do? Why not? And your response was, that wasn't up to me. That was up to the police. Well, no, John. If we remember correctly, the police tried to do their investigation without even having to exhume the body. They tried to look for this stuff without even having to exhume the body. And they told you, we want to talk to you while the body is here. We want to take the autopsy report and ask you questions as we have the body. We want to be able to talk to you and verify on the body what it is. You got mad and said, no, you're not about to keep my daughter. I'm taking my daughter to be buried. You took your daughter to be buried. And then they said, the only way that we can do this and make it work and understand more about the case more conclusively is for you to dig her back up, which you should have never buried her in the first place. Dig her back up and let's talk about it. And John says, I don't know why they didn't do. You are a liar. That is a lie. Because you've already had the conversation. Mike Bynum has already said this publicly. We went up in there and they thought they were just about to railroad John and about to make him. And I said, You had the opportunity to leave JonBenet with the police so they could do what they needed to do. And now that you buried her, she's in peace. And they said, we need to dig her back up. That was what the police said. That's what the police want to do. And then you come back and say, oh, well, the reason we didn't dig her back up is because we had just buried her. You act like the police didn't ask you. That's what I'm saying. You're getting caught up in some lies. You're getting caught up in lies is what you're doing. Can't remember the lie you told before to get to this lie. John, did you forget that you didn't want the police to look anymore? You wanted to go bury her after they said, let us keep her? Did you forget to get on national television 3 years later and act like, oh, I don't know why the police didn't exhume her body. And then to come 2 seconds later and be like, well, I think I didn't want to exhume her. That was an opportunity. Then to act like, oh, I didn't want to exhume her body because she was at peace. We had just buried her. I'm mad at the fact that he's making, this is what I'm mad at. He's making it seem as if he asked the police to check some things on her. And he's asking that as if the police sort of like forced him to bury JonBenet. And then he's acting as if the police later found out something and said, you know what? Sorry, our bad. Can we dig her back up? And then John is acting like he said in response to that, oh, no, done deal is a done deal. I'm not making my daughter go through that. But in actuality, you sped up the process. You held up this investigation. You did. Nobody else did. You did. And now you want to continue to get on the Boulder Police Department for something that you did. They didn't do this. You did it. I am dumbfounded at the stupidity.
We were asked when this theory first surfaced about a stun gun that if the body were exhumed, it could be proved conclusively, but it had to be done fairly quickly.
You can tell he got lost in the question. He couldn't remember. All he remembers is something about the body being exhumed. That's it. And that's why he got lost in the question.
This was within months of when we just buried JonBenet. And I, as her father, could not bring myself to do that. I had laid my child to rest. She was at peace. And that was a decision that I couldn't make.
Even though it might have cleared you?
That was not the priority. The priority was my child was at rest.
Let me talk about some of the evidence.
Guys, what are we talking about? That's like the second time he's mentioned priority. Have you forgotten? We're in the middle of an investigation. I think you think that we think that this is somebody who's just died of natural causes and you bury them and move on. No, that's not what's happening here. JonBenet is what's happening is here is that we are investigating a homicide. You know what that means? Let me define it for you so that we can all be on the same page as to why we are here. We're here because somebody other than herself has unalived her. That's why we are here. So we, as the police, have to figure out who did it. Now that we're clear, that means that she did not do this to herself and she did not die just because of natural causes. Okay? Are we on the same page? That's why we're here. Now we're asking you, what do you know? What can you tell us? Is there anything you can help us with?
That some people may not know about. DNA was found under JonBenet's fingernails and also on her panties. This DNA does not match yours, your son's, any member of your family, or indeed anyone whom the police have questioned.
That's correct.
There was a palm
Incorrect.
print on the door of that room in which JonBenet was found. That print matches no one that anyone has tested, and there is a visible shoe print with the name High Tech clearly visible in the room in which your daughter was found.
I think at this point, it's 2000. So at this point, they figured out that it was Melinda's palm print, I think, from what I understand. That's number one. Number two, this is beyond the grand jury. This is after the grand jury. So we've already found out that there was a question about the high-tech boot print when it came to Burke in the grand jury proceedings. So like you can at least speak to, well, this is a theory with this, or this is a theory with this, but they're denying it. And I don't want to say that I don't think John has ever seen the DNA, because I'm pretty sure he has. But to say that their DNA is not at least mentioned at all is irresponsible. And he's sitting up on television talking about correct, incorrect.
The police have not been able to match this print, this shoe, this DNA to anyone.
That's correct.
Exactly.
And that's what gives us hope that we can find the killer.
You think that's what shows that you're innocent?
I think that will lead us to the killer.
Okay.
I don't accept that as proof that we're innocent. Our objective is to find the killer. That's the only way we will prove our innocence, sadly.
Do you think the murderer is someone you know?
I don't know that I knew this person or not. I hope I don't.
I can't believe that we have ever knowingly met anyone that can be this vicious. But someone killed our daughter. So we have to start looking. We start at the inner circle and keep moving out.
The Ramseys start with the inner circle.
Y'all remember when Linda Arndt wrote in her report that when JonBenet was brought up the stairs, when John brought JonBenet up the stairs, John said He brings JonBenet up the stairs and he looks at Linda and says, "This is an inside job." Let's work backwards because I see we just don't have the same definitions of things. That's what it is. When you say it's an inside job, then you're automatically saying that this is somebody that you're aware of, right? We can all agree on that. We're saying that, say, for example, we're talking about a company, and I say, this is an inside job. Maybe I find some tampering with files, and I say, man, this is an inside job because nobody has access to this file other than somebody internally. That means that if you identify the person, you're going to be able to recognize them in some capacity. If it's a big firm, maybe you don't recognize them right offhand, but you're able to say, you're a systems analyst. You work down in accounting. You create the accounting databases. You work here. Wow, that's crazy. And you can say that. And that's easy. So that's what inside job means. So when you look at the detective and you say, wow, this had to happen on the inside, that means you know the person. You can say, I've seen this person before. I don't know his name, but I've seen him before. Yeah. He comes to my daughter's practice. Or, yeah, that person works for me. Or, oh man, that's crazy. That's a friend of mine. You can say that unequivocally. But now you're jumping on television and you're all over the place. But I want you to notice something right here. I want you to think about something right here. And I'll close it down. I want you to think about something. We often talk about the fork in the road when it comes to the ransom note, right? This imaginary fork in the road where the ransom note leads one way, but then all of a sudden, that road just cuts off. It doesn't go all the way through. It's like double-minded. The Bible has a proverb that says, a double-minded man is unstable in all of his ways. What does that mean? That means and in another place, it says, if I'm remembering correctly, that you should not or cannot be hot between two opinions. That means you need to be sure. And in another place it says, if you are hot or cold, I wish that you were hot or cold, because if you are lukewarm, which are all things to say, you're either here or there. And when we look at that ransom note is lukewarm. It's in the middle. Doesn't give you too much, doesn't give you too little. Gives you just enough to be in the middle and kind of keep you stuck. Gives you just enough to say, well, I don't know. Could be this, could be this, could be this, could be this. It's written in a way that kind of throws you all over the place. And that's every single time you talk to John and Patsy, that's what they do. I don't know. And you ask them to be certain about something. What do you think happened? They never have anything based on evidence. It's always, well, I don't know. Lou Smith's theory sounds good. Even till this day, John does that. Lou Smith's theory sounds good. Oh, this ex-FBI guy that we talked to, his theory sounds good. Oh, people have said this. People have said this. What do you think? It's okay to be wrong. Nobody's asking you to be right. All we're asking you is, what do you think happened? And they never give you a solid answer of, I think this was the case. From the evidence that I've seen, I think this is the case. How come you can't tell me about the evidence other than the DNA? How come you can't tell me about the evidence and all of the evidence that exists on your daughter's case? Let me tell you something. When things happen to people we love, it's hard for us to let it go. Rarely does somebody die and we just let it happen without asking questions. I've had several people of my family and associated family, that means people who are not necessarily blood, but people that I consider family after being friends with them for so long, who have passed away, especially within the last year. And you know what I do? And they died of natural causes. And I say natural causes and all encompassing things like cancer and stuff like that. But you know what I do? Because I want to know. I go and I look up stuff. What is this? The doctor said they died of this. What is that? What does that mean? Just offhand, at random times. I just go look at it at random times because I want to know. Because I measure that up against myself. Oh, are there changes that I need to make to my life? Can I be healthier? Oh, I need to maybe stop drinking so much of this. Maybe I need to stop eating so much of this. And I use that as a measure. And it seems as if John and Patsy have just continued on with their life. Hey, your daughter was killed. What does that mean to you? Oh, I don't know. Yes, they just found her in our house, and that was it. Yeah, we're so hurt. We care so much. I guess the problem is that it doesn't seem like you care. Like I know what you're telling me. I can hear what you're telling me, but it seems like every single thing that you guys do falls through. We ask you for evidence that you can submit to us. You don't want to submit that. Takes you all day to do it. We ask you about things in your house. You don't know. We ask you, would you be willing to testify? You got to think about it. We ask you your theory. You're not quite sure. We ask you, what about this foundation that you guys started? I don't know what happened to it. We just didn't feel like keeping it up. It's defunct now. Don't know. It really feels like the ransom note road that leads to nowhere. We go out about 5 miles and then we get 5 miles out and it's just a dead end. And it's like, why would anybody start paving a 5-mile road and quit? I don't know. Maybe they realized that there was a better road somewhere else. But then I go to another road and that one's paved for 6 miles. And then it stops. It's weird. And then I go to, there's 10 roads in this roundabout, 10 directions that I can go. And every single direction I go to, it ends, which would make me feel like somebody had to pave something. They had to have some sort of car or something. I would see if they had a car and they just stopped paving the road, then that means that this person would have either had to start driving on grass or dirt, and I would see the tire marks. I would see evidence of that. Or they didn't really go anywhere. They just sat in the circle. They just decided not to keep going and just sat in the circle and died. Because there's no real road that has been paved. And I'm starting to feel like there's no real road. Every time we ask John and Patsy about something, there's no real road. It's just like, what? And I see it clearer now than when I first started studying this case. It's just like, yo, y'all really, like, you really don't have anything to say. Every time I ask you a question, y'all aren't saying anything of substance at all. And I am troubled by that. Let me know what you think in the comments. Until next time, like, share, and subscribe. Thank you. Hope you're doing well. Until next time, take it easy.